So welcome. This evening's presentation, A Lawyer's Guide to Navigating the Fourth Industrial Revolution, is part of a series that we've now been running for 3 years, The Future of the Legal Profession. And I hope that I'm sure that tonight will add to that rich resource that series has been for us. Before we proceed further, I would like, on behalf of all of us here, to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose ancestral lands our city campus now stands. We pay respect also to the elders, past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians for this land. Just before I start, a couple of housekeeping matters. Please be aware that tonight's event is being video recorded for subsequent download from the UTS Law website. And if you're not aware, on our law website there is a link to the Future of the Legal Profession series, and we've fortunately been able to film each of our events, and that's a really, again, rich resource around the issues that we've been discussing. In the light of that, if you could please turn your phone to silent so that we have no electronic interference. And I should show it to you. If you would, you're welcome to tweet about tonight's discussion, and the hashtag there is the UTS Future First. Now, tonight's event is part of the law school's 40th anniversary, and it marks the beginning of us as a law faculty with the enrolment of our first students in 1977. We're celebrating 40 years at the forefront of legal education, with flexible learning and a focus on practice-oriented education, hallmarks of our ongoing tradition. As a young law faculty, we're proud to be recognised today among the top 50 law schools in the world. Our theme for this anniversary is 40 years at the forefront, and whilst we celebrate the past, we also look forward to the future. And that fits with the theme of this series and with tonight's lecture. Our Future of the Legal Profession series began in 2015 in order to explore the reality behind the headlines that the legal profession was in crisis and that the future of law graduates was grim. Our intention was to bring together the academy and the profession to discuss these issues, to build an understanding that went beyond the headlines. I also felt that it was incumbent upon us at this law faculty to take a lead in the discussion, with its focus on work-ready, professionally oriented graduates. The inaugural event in 2015, Paradigm Shifts, explored the macro trends and current and future business models in the legal profession. Last year, in Unprecedented Disruption and the Law, we examined the impact of technology on the role of lawyers, a topic that we'll hear more about tonight as well. As I said, those events are all available on film, on video, via our website, and I'm sure you'll find it a rich resource. Now, I initially thought that we might run this series for 3 years and that'd be enough, but everything I see and hear about this topic convinces me that the complexities of the legal futures and the continuing uncertainties, for better and worse, provide much material to continue the series. And so we're already planning our focus for next year, and I hope that later this year we'll be able to announce that. One of the exciting features that the series has brought has been the engagement and the opportunities that have come to the law faculty and to our students. We've been really blessed, I can almost say, by the interest and enthusiasm of law firms, professional bodies and technology companies who've wanted to come and partner with us and to talk more about what we're trying to think about here in the law faculty. As a result, we've been able to develop a number of co-curricular initiatives over the past few years, which we hope foster the skills and the knowledge that our law graduates may need in a changing legal landscape, particularly around technology, and a word that perhaps we don't use often enough in relation to lawyers, innovation. So, for example, we this year ran the Breaking Law Hackathon with King & Wood Mallisons. That feels very long, I think it was only 2 days, but it was a very intense hackathon with tremendous involvement with King & Wood Mallisons and with our students from the Faculty of Engineering and IT as well. And the students worked together trying to address, using technology, innovation, trying to address legal issues and to provide legal solutions. I'm pleased to say that King & Wood Mallisons have asked to run the hackathon with us again next year. Just recently, we completed a great partnership with the Association of Corporate Counsel Australia, which gave students the opportunity to engage in a competition which had made them think about what is the role of an in-house counsel, what different types of skills and considerations do you need to take into account when you're advising the corporate client of whom you're also an employee. And that was, we recently held the final of that, and it was a really great opportunity. We're coming to the final stage of an event that we've been engaged in for most of this year, and that is the Allens Nyota UTS Law Technology Challenge for Social Justice. And here teams of our law students are working with staff from the law firm of Allens, and they're developing apps, of course I should say, for NGO clients using the Nyota Logic artificial intelligence platform. And you know what's fantastic about these opportunities is it's been such authentic experiences for the students. They're working with the law firms, they're working with Mallisons, with Allens, they're actually working with the lawyers in those firms. And it's been great to have the enthusiasm of those lawyers as well in these various programs. And finally, the law firm and legal offered an entrepreneur scholarship to one of our students, enabling them to have the opportunity for both startup business mentoring and paid work experience with the law firm and legal. So we've been really delighted by that engagement, and of course out of that continues to come more ideas as well. The changing nature of the legal profession, the role of technology, other influences upon the legal profession futures also requires us to review traditional approaches to legal education. That doesn't mean, of course, that the core disciplinary knowledge doesn't remain important, but we do have to equip our students for thinking about a different kind of legal future and working environment. And so I'm very excited to be able to announce that next year the faculty will launch Legal Futures and Technology, Australia's first specialist undergraduate legal major in legal technologies and future law practices. Through specialist electives, 2 capstone subjects and internship opportunities, the new major will equip students with the knowledge and the skills to work flexibly, to be able to adapt and to work with those new technologies and the different ways of working with clients in a changing legal environment. So that is another really exciting development that has grown out of the richness that we've received, if you like, through in our knowledge and so forth through this series. And if you'll just indulge me for a moment longer to talk about UTS Law, we like to think that we're a law faculty that is very future focused and that in figurative terms we're constantly on the move, exhaustingly so at times, but always exciting in an excited manner as well. But I'd like to also let you know, and this is, I think, our first public announcement of this, that we will literally be on the move as well. So that in 2019, our new home will be this really exciting building, UTS Central. It's actually located on Broadway, and it's between this building and the tower, the ugly tower, which is nevertheless a very exciting space inside. It's worth visiting. But it will, I'm afraid, possibly be slightly in the shadow against this exciting new building. So we hope that our new building will foster even greater cross-disciplinary collaboration within UTS and external engagement with the legal profession and industry. We will be on the top 3 floors, the law faculty of this building. We will no doubt claim de facto rights over the garden at the roof terrace at the top as well. And we're also in that building will be collaborative classrooms, informal student spaces, the library, and a lot of other really, a really vibrant area to bring the UTS community together. The faculty will have purpose-built spaces in it, the usual trial courts, moot courts, spaces for our students to work together, and also for research collaboration. So I hope that in a couple of years' time, we're able to welcome you to that new home as well. So, I'm sorry for indulging, if you like, a little on what's been happening at UTS, but I think it puts into context the seriousness with which we take thinking about our future as a law school and our future of the legal education that we provide. So I'm really excited to welcome tonight and to introduce Tom Daemen. Tom, as we know, will be speaking on A Lawyer's Guide to Navigating the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Tom is a Director and Assistant General Counsel in Microsoft's Corporate, External and Legal Affairs Group. He currently leads the Legal and Government Affairs teams in Australia and New Zealand, and he's previously held numerous other positions with Microsoft around the world. For example, he worked in Brussels. He helped the company navigate the European Union's legal and political maze, and also helped, you might be able to help the UK at the moment, and also was part of led the legal team responsible for Skype and Office. He has law degrees from Europe and the United States, and Tom is both an English solicitor and a US qualified lawyer. Tonight we explore what is the Fourth Industrial Revolution and what are its implications for the legal profession. Are lawyers equipped to handle this ever-changing digital landscape of major technological advancements, such as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and blockchain? Despite the uncertainties, I firmly believe that the future of law for lawyers provides many opportunities. And I was very keen for that to be a theme for this year's event. The future of work is something that is a challenge throughout our society. But I think for our students and for the professionals of today, we are in very fortunate position. We are highly educated, we have many skills, we have ability to move around, to be flexible, to adapt. And I feel it's really important that we invest time in thinking about what are the opportunities that come through the Fourth Industrial Revolution for future lawyers. And I asked Tom in particular because I think he believes that as well, that this is a positive time, that there are opportunities, and that's why I really wanted him to talk on this tonight. So he'll examine the journey of the Fourth Industrial Revolution currently underway and explore its impact on our global society. He contends that although disruption presents challenges, the legal profession has far too often ignored the upside of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And so Tom will highlight how agility, an innovator's mindset, and rapid adaptability present the legal profession with tremendous opportunities in this new era. So Tom will speak for about 30 minutes, followed by what I anticipate will be a lively question and answer session. I can assure you that I know what a great speaker Tom is. He provided the opening remarks at our Breaking Law Hackathon, so I think that you're in line for a thought-provoking and engaging presentation. Please join me in welcoming Tom Daemen.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you again to UTS for the opportunity to speak here this evening. Apologies in advance for the poor person who's going to try to videotape me walking across the room and facility. But most importantly, thanks to all of you for coming. This is absolutely incredible turnout. Are we sure we're here for the right event? This is phenomenal. I have to admit, I'm amazed at how many people are here because, well, quite frankly, most speeches about technology and the future of the legal profession, well, they're awfully, depressing. And normally the speaker begins by painting a beautifully idyllic picture of an earlier era. You can almost imagine the puppies and kittens frolicking across the lawn as the speaker explains that bygone time, an era when clients paid their bills without complaint. Better still, they paid their bills on time. And perhaps best of all, lawyers could finish up their day in time to go have a lovely dinner with the family. Ah, the good old days. But then the speaker's voice will get a little darker, a little more ominous, and they will say the robots are on their way, technology is here, artificial intelligence is coming, the jobs as we know it are going, and indeed, the legal profession as we know it is doomed, doomed, doomed. This is not that presentation. To the contrary, when the Dean and I kicked off the UTS Legal Hackathon in this very wonderful, beautiful building just a few months ago, here was my opening slide, as it is whenever I speak with law students and young lawyers. And my talk track for this slide is very simple. I say this is the best time in history to be in the business of law. This is the best time in history to be in the business of law. And when I say that to law students or young lawyers, they might be a bit perplexed, but after I explain why, they definitely get it. But when I say this to people of my age, perhaps people who've been out of school for 1 or 2 years. Okay, old people, whatever euphemism you want to use. And I see 1 or 2 of those in the room today, not that I'm pointing fingers. But when I tell people of my generation that this is a fantastic time to be in the business of law, this is the reaction that I get. And no, that's wrong. That's not strong enough. This is the reaction that I get. So why are so many seasoned lawyers so down and depressed about their very own self-chosen profession? Well, I think it's because too many of us have been watching too many of the doom and gloom speeches over the course of the past few years. To which I say, no, this is completely wrong and completely backwards. So my objective over the next 30 minutes is very simple and straightforward. I want to turn that frown upside down. I want to turn all of you into happy, smiley, yellow, bubble-faced person, awash in a sea of negative blue faces, people who are down and depressed about the future. How? How can I do that? Well, hopefully I can convince all of you that out of great change comes amazing opportunity. Those UTS law students involved in the hackathon, they got it, and they got it like that. As do hackathon students every single weekend all over the world. It's time for existing practitioners to do the same. All of which really begs the question, what is this moment of change? What is this disruptive era we keep talking about? And the answer is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The history of humankind is marked by a small handful of disruptive periods, each one triggered by a unique technological innovation. The first was powered by the steam engine, the second industrial revolution powered by the internal combustion engine, the third by the microprocessor, and today's revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, it's being powered by the cloud. Millions of microprocessors and hundreds of data centers located all around the world can store and compute data that heretofore was simply unimaginable. In so doing, it has democratized access to information technology in ways that, again, we could never before have imagined. And the consequence of all these changes? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Technology really and truly is disrupting everything today. After all, we live in a society in which the world's largest hotel chain owns no hotels. We live in a society in which the world's largest taxi company owns no taxis. Here in Australia, perhaps my favorite example is the Yield, a small organization that helps oyster farmers in Tasmania. How do they do it? Well, they have small internet sensors that they drop in the Tasman around Tasmania, and these internet sensors track information, track data around things like salinity in the water, water temperature, tidal currents. And all that data is beamed to the cloud. It is analyzed through machine learning algorithms. And after all that geeky goodness happens, the information is then passed back to oyster farmers in Tasmania in the form of a very simple, easy dashboard that they can access on their phone and computer. And it helps advise them how and when best to harvest. You've heard of the Internet of Things? Well, we call this the Internet of Oysters. And it is a beautiful example of how the Fourth Industrial Revolution in general, and the cloud in particular, really and truly is transforming everything. Whether you are a small oyster farming collective off Tasmania, or one of the largest banks in London and New York. Now, to be sure, with all of this change comes some challenges. And people have rightfully raised concerns and questions about the impact on things like jobs displacement, privacy, and indeed many others are concerned about the impact if people are left behind in this new era. And truth to be told, I spend a great deal of my time talking about and working on these issues, as do many of my colleagues around the world. Because as a large company in the tech sector, we recognize that with all of this digital opportunity for those in the industry comes great digital responsibility. And we want to make sure that we're playing a leading role in trying to address as many of these issues as possible. At the same time, it's also important to not lose sight of the fact that with great opportunity comes opportunity. Now here we have a slide that is a wonderful trite cliche. It is corporate speak at its finest. With opportunity comes opportunity. What does that possibly mean, even if it is a beautiful font offset in lovely floating clouds? You have every right to be cynical about this slide because it does sound like corp speak. And so why am I using it anyway? Well, here's a little secret. Just between us and the people watching on video. I don't use this slide with business audiences. Why? Because people in business instinctively get that there are wonderful opportunities arising from moments of disruption. In fact, that's how many companies made their mark. That's how they leapfrogged over their competitors during these difficult competitive era. But there is something about the legal profession. I don't know if it's the type of people who were attracted to law, how we're trained in law school, or how we operate after law school. But we seem genetically predisposed to look for the negative, to issue spot whenever possible. And these are wonderful, wonderful traits that serve us well in this fantastic profession. But sometimes it means we miss some of the opportunity. We miss looking for the upside and the possibilities that in this case are arising out of that Fourth Industrial Revolution. So what is that upside? What are some of these opportunities? Well, there's only so much we can cover in a quick speech, but I wanted to highlight 3 fun, quick examples. A kid in front of a computer, Earth, and hamburger ordering kiosks. Makes complete sense, right? All self-evident? Let's jump into it. First, a kid in front of a computer. Now, what I didn't tell you in the introduction is that we're going to have a few quiz questions during tonight's presentation. So quiz question number 1, what is the name of the big computer? Ooh. What's the T stand for in UTS again? Okay, come on. Hints. It's in Australia, but not Sydney. CIRAC! Australia's first mainstream digital computer in 1949 went on for decades, a monumental development in the history of computing. You folks need to get out more. You're not going to computer museums. Now, I love this picture. I adore this picture for a couple of reasons. First, I am utterly convinced that my daughter is in front of CIRAC texting away to her friends back in the States saying, "My dad dragged us to the bottom of the world so he could show us dusty old computers." True! Guilty as charged, worst dad ever. But that's actually not why I love this picture. I love this picture because of the beautiful juxtaposition of old and new technology. Obviously, that fruit phone in her hand is orders of magnitude more powerful than CIRAC. And perhaps best of all, she holds the world information at her fingertips because of the magic of the interwebs. And it is this sheer computing power, it is the democratization of this computing power, why we should be so excited about the future of law. You see, all this computing power will enable us to automate work that, frankly, most lawyers don't want to do. Computers today can handle document production, due diligence reviews, lots of contractual analysis, allowing every single person in this room to move up the value stack, do more important work, more strategic work, frankly, more fulfilling work. So reason number 1 why you should be excited about the Fourth Industrial Revolution and embrace where the legal profession is headed, the ability to do more strategic and worthwhile work. Next up, the globe. Side note, Why is it more expensive to buy a licensed image of the Southern Hemisphere than the Northern Hemisphere? I don't know, but if someone knows, I would love to hear it. Sorry, tangent. Back in the olden days, when I went to law school, we had fancy professors who taught international law, and the students were going to become international lawyers, and if you asked them after school, they were going to be international lawyers and live and work abroad. Seemed like a very niche, specialized profession back then. Well, today, 2017, we have more lawyers living and working all over the world than ever before. It is an absolutely fantastic time for anybody who is interested in any sort of international law, cross-border transactions, regulatory issues, public policy issues, international trade, you name it. If you are interested, this is the moment in time. But the best part is it's all powered by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's all powered by the cloud. That's why all of this is possible. And so reason number 2 why you too should be excited by the Fourth Industrial Revolution and positive about the future of law, the opportunity to be true global lawyers. Next up, hamburger ordering kiosks. Many people dislike hackathons and say all they're about is the kioskification of law, which they don't like, dislike, they don't like where it's headed, and frankly all around are frustrated by it. And I think they're completely wrong, because quite frankly, applying technology to legal solutions is a wonderful thing. And it's a wonderful thing for 2 reasons. Number 1, again, it allows each and every one of us to move up the value stack and do more important and strategic work. Number 2, computers can do something that humans can't. They can scale. And here in Australia, as in every country around the world, there is a big divide between rich and poor when it comes to the delivery of legal services. There are huge parts of the community that have never before been able to access high-quality legal services. Why? Because lawyers don't scale. Guess what? Technology does. That's why I'm so excited about the Allen's Hackathon with UTS. It is a wonderful example of how you can use computing power to help address social injustice in the world. Reason number 3 why you should be excited by the Fourth Industrial Revolution and hopeful about the future of the legal profession, the opportunity to help close the rich-poor divide when it comes to delivery of legal services. Now, these are just 3 examples of many other positive attributes of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Now, I will admit, we have a bit of a maths equation here, and we have a legal audience, but it's okay. There are no maths quizzes at the end of the day. Plus, it's an engineering building, so I think this is okay. But if you add up all these things, if you combine the fact that we can now move up the value stack, do more important strategic work, we can all become true international lawyers, and perhaps best of all, we can help close the rich-poor divide when it comes to delivery of legal services. When you combine those 3 things, well, it makes for a wonderful and exciting and optimistic time for the future of not just the legal profession, but society as a whole. But the only way this will happen is if we all embrace change. We all embrace where this world is headed. But whenever I say that, people invariably come up to me afterwards and say, that's a nice rhetorical platitude, but how do you make it real? How can you help me navigate the steps that I need to take to get from here to there? And my first recommendation always is, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. You see, what sometimes seems like a hot new issue, a challenging new topic, is in many respects just the next chapter in an ongoing discussion. A discussion that's as old as innovation itself. You see, technology has always been an engine of change. In some cases, technology has literally been an engine of change. Here we have the first steam engine arriving in Canberra. And here we have the first automobile on the streets of Melbourne, years ahead of Henry Ford's ubiquitous Model T, by the way. Congratulations, way to go, Australia. When the train displaced the horse and the car displaced the train, technology changed society as we know it. It created entirely new bodies of law, and it unleashed public debates about safety, regulation, and innovation that took decades to resolve. And that's why it's important to not panic, not think we're entering some unique moment that no one has ever faced before, but rather take a step back and reflect on the fact that we are simply the latest generation to talk about the latest technology and the latest round of technology-driven disruption. Now, all of that is nice and well and good, but it still leaves open the question, what are some practical, pragmatic steps we can take to help adapt ourselves to this new era? What's the best response? And again, there's only so much we can cover in a short speech, but I wanted to highlight 2 specific concrete examples. Number 1, avoid special snowflake syndrome. I hear from a lot of lawyers, law firms, legal professionals who say, this whole whole industrial revolution and change movement, A, I think it's marketing for large technology firms, and B, even if it is real, it's not going to impact us because law is different. Law is unique. And then some of my favorite lines are, you see, it won't impact us because law is a profession, not a business. Law is about the delivery of services and trusted relationships, and that can't be provided by a bot. And on and on and on. Now, I hate to break it to all of us, but just because we have a law degree doesn't insulate us from the real world. And in fact, if you look over the course of the past 10, 15 years, all sorts of other communities have effectively claimed special snowflake status and said, no, this change won't impact us. 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot of governments who said, this disruption thing is interesting, but really, public services are different. They're unique, they're special, and we really shouldn't go to the cloud or do things along these lines. Well, today, governments all around the world are using all sorts of cloud to provide all sorts of public services, and things are going extremely well. About 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was the turn of the financial services institutions. A lot of banks and insurance companies once again said, I don't know about this whole cloud disruption thing. We're special, we're unique, we're different. We couldn't possibly use the cloud or some of these modern technologies. And here again, over the course of the past couple of years, there are banks all around the world that have adopted the cloud and are doing absolutely wonderful, amazing things for you, their customers, thanks to the technology generated by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Over the past couple of years, it's been the healthcare organizations here again saying, healthcare is tough, which I will admit, it is very tough. Electronic patient records are critical. These are difficult issues. But is it so unique that it's an industry that can't get disambiguated by this modern technological revolution? Answer no. You look around the world, there are all sorts of healthcare organizations using all sorts of cloud to provide all sorts of public services. And so that leaves us with the legal profession. Another group that right now is sort of claiming unique special snowflake status and thinks that it too will not be disrupted. And as you can probably sense from where I'm headed, I just don't think that's the case. And that's why I strongly recommend that everybody avoid special snowflake syndrome when we can. Because again, you know my position. These changes are net positive. It is a wonderful time, so we should all avoid special snowflake syndrome, embrace where the world is headed, and take advantage of these changes as soon as we possibly can. Practical tip number 1, avoid special snowflake syndrome. Practical tip number 2, driving for agility in everything we do. Now this is applicable whether you're in-house lawyer, outside counsel, in academia, government law society, you name it. As we look around the world at this point, our customers who are doing well in this Fourth Industrial Revolution are those who are especially adept at being nimble and agile. And I've highlighted here 5 common traits for those organizations. Let me quickly run through a couple of the key ones. First, it's about culture, not technology. Now I know it's a bit odd that the tech guy is saying it's not all about technology, but guess what? Sometimes it's not all about technology. Heresy, I know. Look at it this way. If you work for a non-nimble, non-agile, highly risk-averse conservative organization, and you layer technology on top of that culture, you are not going to magically transform that culture into a lean, mean, highly agile fighting machine. Not going to happen. You might make some of the inefficiencies more efficient, I'll grant that, but the underlying cultural context won't change. That's why we always tell our customers, focus on the culture as well. You can do it simultaneously with the technology piece. That's totally fine. But don't ignore the cultural component that is core to agility. Point number 2, fail fast, fail often, monetize later. This one's fairly self-evident. I'm not going to belabor it. I will say that when, again, we look at our customers around the world, traditional business customers and entities, they get this one, and they're trying to head in that direction. We find the law firms and legal professionals struggle. It's just not something that's in our nature, and I do think it's something we're all going to have to work on going forward. Next example. Focus on the business model, ignore the lawyering. The world is filled with a lot of really, really good lawyers. There are fewer great lawyers and fewer terrible lawyers, but there are lots of really, really good lawyers out there. The best way to differentiate ourselves in this new world order is to use the technology provided by the Fourth Industrial Revolution and think of new business models, new solution services. In other words, solve people's problems better and differently thanks to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. That is a far more effective way to differentiate yourselves than what I'll call old traditional ways of differentiation in the legal community, like I went to this law school and it ranks higher than this law school. I graduated this way as opposed to this way. In a world filled with really good lawyers, this is the best way to be agile, nimble, and differentiate yourselves. Next point. Think global, act local or global. As you can sense from my Earth slide, I'm really enamored of the fact that the cloud allows all of us to live and work all over the world. I think it's a wonderful attribute of the fourth industrial revolution. And as an in-house counsel, this is incredibly positive for us because we can now source legal talent from all around the world. I do find, however, that a lot of our outside counsel haven't quite gotten this one yet. And so I do find myself frequently noting to outside counsel that their competitors can, and in fact are, located all around the world. That's just inherent in the nature of the cloud. Now, those local firms don't necessarily have to become international providers. They just need to recognize that the competition can and does come from anywhere. On any given day, I have no idea where my folks are. My commercial lawyers could be sitting on the beach of Bora Bora. My public policy people could be hanging out in London. Don't know, don't care, doesn't matter. That's the new world order. Finally, stop looking for the big one. Whenever I speak with individual law firms about digital disruption, invariably partners will come up to me afterwards and say, again, it sounds like big tech company marketing. I'm not sure it's real. And even if it doesn't seem to be impacting our firm. We're making gobs of money. Our people are busy. Thanks for your time, but it just doesn't seem to be relevant to us. And if we have the time, what I try to do then is take 5 to 10 minutes to walk them through their business practices. Perhaps we start with accounting. I say, how are you doing the accounting in your firm? Oh, you're using software company X. Well, that's a cloud-based service. Or how are you being in that data? Oh, discovery. Interesting. Are you really still doing discovery just on paper? Are you not doing any sort of machine learning, AI, algorithmic searches? Oh, that's going in the cloud too. Oh, your clients, where do they want the data stored? Oh, they're using their cloud or your cloud. And very quickly, within 5 to 10 minutes, we can easily highlight a half dozen to a dozen examples of how those firms have, in fact, transformed. See, too many people in the legal profession are waiting for this one magical moment, this big bang moment when the world is transformed. And that's just not how the digital transformation in the fourth industrial revolution is happening. It's happening instead through these smaller moments. Moments that might seem insignificant on their own, but taken collectively, really and truly are having a significant impact on the legal profession. Which again, as you know from me, means for the positive. Now, if we can do this to those two things, just those two things, avoid special snowflake status and drive for agility in everything we do, we will be well on our way to becoming happy, smiling, bubble-faced person, while the world around us is frowny-faced and depressed because they are ultimately fighting the unwinnable fight against the inevitable march of technological progress. And so let me close now with a couple of images that we think beautifully illustrate an earlier disruptive era. Here's quiz question number 2. You failed so far. Got one more chance. What is the name of the building in the center here? Flatiron Building. All right, 1 for 1. I think that's a passing grade. Excellent. Here we have the faculty didn't get it. I don't know what that says. Here we have one of the most iconic locations in the whole of the United States, the Flatiron Building. Roughly 1905. And as you can see, it's all about horses and buggies. Now let's hit the fast forward button. Roughly 20 years. You'll see the horses and buggies have been replaced by cars and delivery vehicles. So what happened in the interim? What happened in those 20 years? Well, there was a moment of amazing disruption. You see, in 1905, there were 100,000 people in Manhattan just to deal with the horses. It took 100,000 people in New York to drive, manage, feed, groom, and yes, clean up after all of those horses. Well, over the course of the next 20 years, all of those jobs all but disappeared. But think about what else happened. As hay-fed horsepower gave way to oil-fed horsepower, society was completely changed. We created millions of new high-paying jobs. Entirely new industries were created. Productivity boomed, and the world, not just New York City, but the world grew incredibly. So here we have the Flatiron Building today. And I would ask all of you to think, what is this picture going to look like in 15 to 20 years? Now, we suspect that the cars and buses and delivery vehicles will still be there, but we also suspect that most of them will be electric, all of them will be electric, and all of them will be autonomous. So 20 years from now, we are looking at a world of electric autonomous vehicles. In other words, we're about to have another remarkable disruptive period. A period that will be especially disruptive for everybody in this picture who makes their living driving these vehicles. But again, don't forget all the positives here. Don't forget the upside for society as a whole. The roads will be safer. The air will be cleaner. The environment as a whole will be much, much better. And those are just 3 quick examples. And that is why, at the end of the day, as an individual, as an in-house legal department, as a company, and as an industry, we see the glass as half full. That's not to downplay or dismiss very legitimate concerns about very real dislocation. But as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to work super hard to address as many of those problems as quickly, aggressively, and creatively as we can. But again, when you look at the world all up, when you look at the big picture, the positives are absolutely extraordinary. And that's why we are so optimistic about where the 4th Industrial Revolution is taking us. But now we get to the best part of the evening, because now we get to hear from all of you. We have a couple hundred people in the room, and that means we have a couple hundred opinions in the room. And I know from having given this speeches in many other contexts that many of you will disagree with some of this analysis. Many of you will look at that glass and say, In fact, not only is it not half full, it's full, because many people actually think we aren't being positive and optimistic enough. I hear from many people who say, all these concerns about job displacement and privacy, they're all overblown. We dealt with the jobs challenges and early disruptions, and we will do the same now. At the same time, I know there are many people in the room who will look at that glass and say, it's not half empty, it's empty. And you see a dystopian future far more troubling than we've talked about this evening. And so we've left a half hour. As the Dean mentioned, I'm sure we will have a wonderful, good discussion and debate about the issue. This is a wonderful topic, and as you can see, I'm incredibly passionate about it. I hope all of you are willing to share and engage in the debate and the discussion. We're excited about where all of this is headed, and I hope you are as well. Thank you very much.
Tom, thank you so much. I think you've probably given us actually an agenda for another 6 topics at least. That was a great coverage. We've got microphones roaming around there on both sides. If you've got a question, please use the microphone, particularly because we're being recorded. And if you'd like, it would be great if you might introduce yourself as well. So, yes, down the front, thanks.
Thanks very much for a very interesting talk. Alan McKay from the University of Sydney Foundation Programme here. I was just going to ask a question about if you had any thoughts about the size of the legal profession. I understand that there might be some opportunities to be taken. I can see the upside, and I can see some reasons for optimism, but so if we imagine 10 years from now, do you think the legal professional will be a similar size, smaller, bigger? That's my question.
I'm going to answer a lawyer question with a lawyer answer. It depends on how you define the legal profession. And this is something that we've spent a lot of time talking with a lot of universities. If someone graduates from law school and they join a legal startup, is that a law job? Is that a software job? Is that a business job? And to me, the answer is yes. It's all of the above. And I do think that one of the things that we all need to do is come to grips with the fact that there is a role that technology can play in the provision of legal services. And I am completely comfortable saying the students from UTS who get this amazing new degree, if they go into the technology sector to provide legal services, I count that as a law job. And so I think we need to almost change our taxonomy. A law job should no longer be viewed as, I'm going to be in this office, in this high-rise, in this law firm. We need to think of it more broadly. Now, to answer the substance, where the question was really headed, it's not going to shock me if there are fewer traditional law jobs in the future, because they will be supplemented with all these new next-gen law jobs. I do think there is a great opportunity to have more great lawyers. Lawyers who can take into account all of these developments and innovations, who can augment their skills through artificial intelligence and all the rest of it. So, net, perhaps fewer traditional law jobs, more all-up law jobs, and definitely opportunities for more top-tier law jobs.
Can I just add to that, and I agree, Tom, with what you've said, and I also think, and I think it's part of the role of those of us in the university we've really got to try and help our students and the community understand what that legal profession is about. I think often when our students come in to law school, they come in with a very traditional notion of what a lawyer is and what it's going to look like when they come out at the end. And I think we've got through the classroom, through our co-curricula, through the sorts of things we've been doing in this series to really help to change that. And equally at that broader community level, I think again, and it was part of that, I think fairly superficial reporting and reporting around, well, there are no jobs for graduates, because it was looking at a very narrow view of what is the legal profession, and I think in particular skewed to certain types of law firms. So I think we have a real responsibility within the academy to help people to understand that broader concept of the lawyer for the future. Other questions? Yes, over in the corner, thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Peter Dawkins, Head of Legal Project Management at Gilbert & Tobin. Just to pick up on that point, so future extrapolating, would you see the ideal future law firm as basically being a hedge fund? You know, a few very senior partners making very strategic choices supported by technology, but not really much value or use for any sort of mid-tier, particularly lower level, junior lawyers and paralegals. Of course, that then has an implication for, in the future, how do we actually end up with partners in the future if there's no one training these juniors and these mids? How do you see the profession, or how do you see law firms in the future being structured?
I would say it's a debate that we've had for decades, even before technology really kicked in. I remember 20 plus years ago, right when I was out of school, we had that classic law firm retreat. Everybody from the world flew in, and they had the general counsel from some fancy bank was there, and this particular bank was saying, we won't pay for, it was first to fourth year, something like that. And one of the litigators said something to the effect of, well, how do you expect us to train the next generation of lawyers? Where's the future? And the GC fought back immediately and said, not our business problem. Right? This was way before artificial intelligence, way before all the technology stuff. We have had this tension in the system for decades, and ultimately it does all work out. And I do think it's a good example of there will be new business models. Gilbert & Tobin has done great work on the technology front. I think you really are a terrific example of how you can use technology, still have a wonderful young generation of top-tier associates, and have wonderful top-tier partner careers as well. That model, I think, is a good illustration of where lots of other law firms can go. This is one where I just don't believe in dystopian future.
Can I just follow up with a question? It was something that occurred to me when you were speaking. I think it relates partly to that. And it was when you were talking about business models and so forth. And I wonder, is part of the problem that in a way we're not looking, when we look at this problem, we see it from our own perspective, the lawyer's perspective, and we're not looking at it enough from how does this disruption actually also create opportunities for the audience. And you touched on at one point and mentioning the work we're doing with Allens and Meritologic as well. So the opportunity for communities that don't have access. And would it help us in the sense of that maybe as lawyers we need to be thinking more about, well, who is out there that we need to be thinking about as our audience as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was a question, not a question.
Look, but it's fair. It is. All of these new technologies allow us to solve problems that we didn't even know existed before, or we knew existed before, but we couldn't really address in the past. That's why I love the Allens engagement. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. NGOs and nonprofits have struggled in this space for years. They have plenty of legal issues and challenges as well. They could never afford the big fancy law firm, but they sure can afford the types of technology-driven solutions that are available today. Again, I think those are law jobs, even if they're not technically considered law jobs. But net for society, it's a wonderful thing. It's a great thing, and we should embrace it, no matter how we characterize it in law school rankings and other sorts of things like that.
Yes, up the back there.
Thank you for your engaging presentation. My name is Rami. I'm just wondering, can you give any specific examples where this technology may actually be able to simplify the sometimes over-complex language that the law industry uses and frightens lay people?
That's not a lawyer talking.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, look, venture capital and private equity funding is at all-time high in the legal technology startup space. And that's because exactly of some of the challenges that you highlight. There is a wonderful opportunity for disruption in the law. And in fact, there are a number of startups, especially in the contract space, who are trying to do just that. Trying to automate the creation of, I'll call them real English language versions of what legal contracts would look like. Some of those startups look very exciting, some look less than exciting, some have a future, some don't. But there are many, many people looking at just that in the startup space. And for people interested in that area, I would definitely say keep an eye out on all the legal tech startups. It is incredible how many are out there. And simplification is a critical component to much of their success.
And there was another question over here.
Hi, it's Beth Patterson
Beth.
from Alex. Enjoyed your talk. This is really a question about where the liability sits when you're using some of these advanced technologies like machine learning or an expert system, where you're encoding the lawyer's knowledge combined with the technology. And what if something goes wrong? I'd be interested in your thoughts on what that liability landscape looks like in the future.
How has the contract that you negotiated looked? Minutes, or joking, but really the reality right now is there are so many different players, there are so many cooks in this kitchen that it is a very almost project by project assessment. Over time, there will become clearly an industry commercial standard, as there is in so many other areas in technology right now. But at the moment, many people are clearly very nervous about that. I have a lot of law firms who approach us and say, for this particular due diligence project, we're offering you both human review and AI-based review. But we know the AI-based review might only be, 80% accurate, but we're going to do both in parallel for the same price, essentially, because we need additional data to improve the accuracy of the AI machine, because the firms themselves are a little nervous about the quality and accuracy of the results, and therefore some of them they have liability concerns there. I do think we are in a window where there will be a lot of multi-tier tracks right now. There will be projects in which both humans and machines operate simultaneously, and so we all get comfortable with the accuracy and the quality of work, and therefore can set more standard contractual provisions around liability. But right now, it is a bit chaotic, it is a bit ad hoc, and you can either be comfortable with that and charge ahead and try to meet the cutting edge, or you can retrench a little bit and wait to see how the world plays out.
No, there's a few questions. There's so one at the back there. Yes.
Hi, good evening everyone. Thank you very much for that talk. My name is Robert. I am a student of the UTS Law School and a participant in the Allen's and the UTS Law Tech Challenge for social justice. I suppose I'll start with a brief testament to the challenge thus far, and I think I spoke on behalf of some, well, I don't speak on behalf of them, but through my experience thus far, I can say quite confidently that my mindset has changed towards technology in the challenge thus far, and there's no way that the role of the lawyer will diminish in the future, and there's no way that that technology will diminish it. If anything, it will enhance the role of the lawyer, increase efficiency, reduce overheads, generate leads, and so forth. Which leads me to my next question, which is, how can we as students and lawyers, what are the next steps forward in terms of developing technological acumen? We've been developing some expertise in AI, so what are the next steps forward? How can we improve? What are our options?
You're doing it. And honestly, the work that you're doing, all the hackathons, all the developments, all the startups, that is where this world is headed right now. When we speak to a lot of VCs in this space, they sort of look at the legal tech environment the way financial tech was, say, 10, 15 years ago. Very fragmented, lots of startups in this space. There will be more consolidation. There are far more ideas than there are good ideas right now. But what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing, and that is where the industry is headed. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit chaotic. But the good news is, you're at the vanguard. It is a wonderful time. I keep saying this despite all the blue frowny faces out there. It is a wonderful time to come out of law school because it will be your generation that is changing the profession by doing what you're doing. That's not to say it's going to be easy. That's not to say there won't be lots of bumps in the road. It's not to say that a lot of these startups won't collapse. They will. That's the way this environment works. But that is the future, and it's an exciting time.
Just the question over here first.
I think my question has actually been answered by the other student. I was just going to kind of touch on the point of young people, like myself as a law student and having kind of worked in a law firm and a legal tech startup and part of a body of young students and young lawyers who are really trying to push this legal tech innovation agenda. We've always kind of come across the same problem, is how do we get our partners and senior managers to kind of listen to us as young people? And I guess your answer kind of helps with that very much. It's kind of continue doing the same thing we're doing is what I'm hearing. But
let me tweak it a little bit. Why do you need the partners and senior managers? Candidly.
Because I think they're also the ones that are hiring us, right?
Well, but again, there is we do, as the dean said, we need to change our definition a little bit about what it means to be a law grad. There are lots of law grads who look at the traditional law firm environment and say, I can actually be more impactful in the law by joining the law tech startup. And that is a community that will be perhaps a little more receptive to those interests than some of the big traditional law firms. So when I say keep doing what you're doing, that doesn't necessarily mean keep butting your head against the wall in a firm that doesn't like what you're doing. I'm saying embrace this opportunity, including what we would call a non-traditional perspective on a legal career. And hopefully, over the next 5 to 10 years, we will stop calling it a non-traditional legal career, and we will just call it a legal career, because that is what we should be calling it going forward.
You know, what's interesting too, I think, in just as you summed up your experience, you're a law student, you've worked in a law tech, I think, environment and a legal firm. So, you know, look at that rich experience in that short space of time, and you have something that most older lawyers don't have that same experience. They're grappling, you know, to catch up in a way with that. There was a question here for a while, and then yes. Yeah. Just there.
My name is Oliver. I'm actually taking a break from the law at the moment. And my question is on the other side of the equation. I'm just curious if you've seen innovation in the law-making side. Because I think a lot of our laws are still land-based and industrial age-based. Like in the age of the cloud transcends the traditional legal borders. And I'm not sure if there's innovation happening in how we make the laws and the kind of laws that we make.
Again,
from parliaments and regulators.
Look, it's a great tension. Obviously, over history, law has never been able to keep up with technology. It's an especially acute problem today. As a company, we've been calling on the modernization of legal regimes, certainly for the past 10, 15 years, where it is a major problem. It's tough. It's tough. Look, it's hard for us in the tech industry to just keep up with what we're doing, much less have the law keep up. And so I don't have a great answer to your question other than the fact that it is a major problem, it is a challenge, it's something we're all struggling with, especially large multinational tech companies who, when you launch a product, more often than not, you're dealing not just with conflicting laws, but laws that are, well, not just with overlapping laws, but conflicting laws. It's a tough issue with no easy answer, unfortunately. The good news is it does make for very large legal departments. Because we have to analyze all
the complexity
requirements. So there's your law job upside for
And over there, thanks.
Hello. Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm an in-house counsel at Veolia. So coming from a kind of a different side to a law firm, I'm probably the only person in a team of 10 that's interested in anything to do with legal innovation, the future of the legal technologies and whatnot. And I think a lot of that comes from the lack of understanding from the rest of my colleagues. I mean, and even I don't know. I talk about the cloud, and I know it's important, and I know that my our client's data kind of goes somewhere, and I know that we host it in Hong Kong. And I know that's a problem with Commonwealth contracts because we have to host it in Australia. But I don't actually understand the nuances of what's going on. And we're hiring someone to make an app for us right now. And they're asking me for our terms, and I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. Nobody else knows what to do. And as much as I try to explain and push the importance of blockchain onto my colleagues, because it's coming, that's how transactions will happen, when they ask me to explain to them, I'm like, I know it's important. I mean, I know data goes there and something goes there. So my question is, as a young lawyer or a young junior counsel, how important is it to understand actually how the technology works? Because I can guarantee we've been talking about cloud this whole lecture, but I'm betting most of us don't know how it actually works. Thank you.
So a couple multiple layers to the question there. And I think the first thing I would say as a young lawyer, there are some wonderful resources through law associations, bar associations. I know there are a number of ACC representatives here tonight. Certainly the ACC websites around the world have some terrific resources on how to learn about these issues, how to contract around these issues, how to understand enough of the level of technological understanding that you need. Basically, you don't have to go all super geek to understand how the contract should be written, but obviously a little bit of technical understanding certainly helps. And so I guess my number one tip and recommendation is try to join and engage with some of those law societies and legal organizations where you can get a good grounding in some of these issues. There are also some nice privacy and security groups. The International Association of Privacy Professionals, Australia and New Zealand is another one. We're just coming in and sitting in some of the sessions will teach you a lot of basics, and again on their website they've got all sorts of information there available as well. So really the bigger challenge, quite frankly, is that there's almost too much information out there. So finding a couple of what you perceive to be trusted resources and going back to them to learn some of the basics is key. No, you don't have to be a super geek. Yes, it does help to have a slightly more sophisticated understanding than just there's this thing called the cloud, but you certainly don't need to know the details. The more the better, but you don't need to know it all.
And a question there.
Hi Thomas, thank you for coming today and this very insightful lecture you gave. My name is Dave. I have two questions. First question is, how does the law technology reconcile with the ethical dilemmas out there? For example, I think Uber drivers are driving for less than the minimum wage in Australia. That's one question the law and technology has to address. Obviously, that's a real issue. The second question is, with all the disruption, what is constant in law that you can see? Something that doesn't change fundamentally. Thank you.
Let me touch on the ethical issue first, and it is a big one right now. The area in which I speak a lot about ethics, frankly, is artificial intelligence and the use of big data. When you think of AI, when you think of big data, obviously there is a pure legal compliance question. Are you using the data in a way which complies with the law of that country or the nature of the consent that the person gave? Right? There's a classic pure legal compliance question. But the point that I make is that for most organizations, there is a high order bit. And that is, what is your ethical standard when it comes to using that data and that information? How will you use it, even if it is ethical? Will you, in our case, for example, we've joined with Apple, Google, Facebook, the usual suspects, to come up with a core set of ethical principles on the use of big data to drive AI. For example, one of those core principles is we will only use big data to create AI that augments human abilities. That's not a legal compliance question. That is an ethical standard. Right? You can use big data in ways that would go far beyond just augmenting human abilities. That is an ethical principle we have taken, and is something that we encourage all sorts of other companies and organizations out there to do. So completely agree with you, and I actually spend a lot of time speaking with other in-house lawyers and in-house organizations about making sure that their companies are not just thinking about pure legal compliance. It's not just about the contract, to use your question earlier. It's about what are your ethical principles where you think this world is headed. And it's a critical issue that, frankly, I think a lot of organizations really haven't gotten their head around. So completely agree with you on the ethical point. And now I've spoken so long I've forgotten your second question.
The second question was, what is constant in law when we have all this disruption of technology and industrial revolution, so on and so forth? What is constant that you can see? Something that doesn't change, so we can at least learn from the law schools and so on.
Well, here I come back a little bit to my first answer. Technology is changing and changing incredibly quickly, but there are some timeless values that to which we believe all organizations should adhere to. Notions of trust, transparency, in our case, transparency in how data is used, for example. The technology may change around that, but we think there is a core value around openness and transparency on those issues. That is the key for most organizations right now. It's a little bit, we have the question about law can't keep up with where technology is headed. And I would say in most organizations, compliance policies can't keep up with where technology is headed. And that's why we strongly recommend that organizations look for those timeless values and they try to set ethical stakes in the ground for how they want to operate, so that you can anchor your organization not just on compliance, not just on a law that can't keep up with where technology is going, but make sure that your organization is true to its core values. That's hard. It's really, really hard. But it's the only way to navigate a world in which technology is changing so quickly.
Now, we've got one question here. Look, I think, and that'll have to be the last, but there will be an opportunity to talk to Tom outside. So, yeah.
My name's Carly. I'm a founder of an employment law disruptor. The premise or the idea that I identified was that many of the questions that I ask a client are repeatable tasks. So the very first step is just to identify whether the person is eligible to bring the claim in the first instance. The skill set is more than once in determining that aspect, what are the prospects of success? And so my question for you is that I have developed technology that will determine whether a person is eligible, but that is where the technology ends, and I then match them with an employment lawyer that assesses the prospects of success and represents the client. How far off are we on artificial intelligence that will conduct that second step for us? And how accurate is it, and how accessible is it?
Great question, great example. And an example that we see all across the law. And there are a ton of startups creating bots that do just that in all sorts of legal areas. So you are right smack in the heart of where we see all sorts of law tech innovation and disruption. So that part is awesome. How good, how accurate is AI? And here's one where I always love the people with those magical crystal balls who will say, AI is perfect and the world is ending, or AI is terrible. And frankly, I don't know. Some AI analytics are really good. Some aren't so good. Do I have the crystal ball that says, in 2 weeks' time, it will be so awesome that you will get the perfect answer? No. And quite frankly, I distrust the people who say they have the magical answers to exactly when AI will be that good. Again, venture capital and private equity investment is flooding into this exact space in the legal tech community because they see the upside. These folks don't invest in areas where they don't see opportunity. And they absolutely see opportunity for disruption in this space. And as you said, it's that next step. Right now, it's very easy to automate what we in the geek community would call a whole series of if-then statements. If the person is coming from this country, then they have to do this form. If they have this medical condition, then we have to answer the following 5 questions in the immigration context. Super easy to automate. That next step is the killer, and that's why we see so much investment in that space. When is that magical moment going to happen? Don't know, but it's sure going to happen, and that's when a lot will change.
That's actually, I think, a great spot to stop. I'm sorry, I know there are other questions, but that's a great opportunity for you to share in some refreshments outside and to continue the discussions. But please join me in thanking Tom for a really great